Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining our Smiley Talk on Can Positive Identity Be Taught? So we have a fantastic host with us today. We have our Smiley Talk Education Ambassador, Ray Snape, who's going to be leading the panel discussion with our three speakers. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Smiley Movement to begin with. So Smiley Movement is a not-for-profit sponsored by the original Smiley brand, as you can see here. We're a community interest company, and everything we do is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Our aim is to inspire people to drive positive action and make a difference in the world. So shortly we'll be hearing from our hosts and have some instructions from our speakers, but just to let you know, wherever you're watching on Twitter, Facebook or YouTube, if you do have any questions, just let us know and pop it wherever you're watching. We'll be scanning social media and seeing what questions there are and getting to them near the end of the hour. This talk aligns with the UN Goal 4, which is quality education, and we have an hour, so I'm not going to take any more time, and I'm going to pass over to Ray, who will be hosting the talk today. So over to you, Ray.
Thank you so much, Amy. I am delighted to be here this afternoon to welcome my very special guests. We've got Pepe Hart, Adrian Bethune, and Andrew Moffat. And my name is Ray Snape. I'm a head teacher and national leader of education. And as you've heard from Amy, I'm a Smiley Education Talks ambassador, as indeed is Adrian Bethune. So welcome, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the idea of identity. The importance of identity in connection to our sense of well-being. And before I get on to introducing our wonderful panel this afternoon, I just wanted to share with you the idea about where my interest is coming from in regard to this word identity. So at the moment, we're looking at our curriculum design here in the school, which we've set around a compass. And at the bottom of the compass is the idea that children should feel very happy and pleased with themselves and have a strong sense of belonging. Then on the east of the compass is the idea that they should be able to make good connections, both digitally and in person. On the west of the compass is academic skills. And in the north is the idea with voice, choice, and agency, our young people are empowered to make the world a better place. But we're starting today with this idea of identity. And the question I'm going to be asking and exploring with our three wonderful panelists is, how important is a child's identity and their sense of belonging? And how does that set the foundation for everything else in education and in learning? But as I said, I want to start by introducing each of our speakers individually. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about Adrian. Adrian is the founder of Teach Happy and author of Wellbeing in the Primary Classroom, a practical guide to teaching happiness and positive mental health, as well as the co-author of A Little Guide for Teachers, Teacher Wellbeing and Self-Care, written with Dr. Emma Kell. Adrian is a healthy body and mind leader and key stage 2 primary teacher in Hertfordshire. He was awarded a Happy Hero Medal at the House of Lords and has been on stage with the Dalai Lama and Lord Richard Layard talking about the importance of happiness in school. He has contributed to many, many books and magazines and has also contributed very kindly to my book on how to be a primary head teacher. So thank you very much, Adrian. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Ray. Thanks for having me.
And then I'm going to introduce you to Pepe, a former head teacher of the Academy of Trinity Primary School in Radstock. Under Pepe's leadership, the school achieved 4 outstanding Ofsted. I am particularly inspired by Pepe's work, in particular the curriculum work that she developed in celebration of the life of Stephen Lawrence. Pepe received a Diana Anti-Bullying Award in recognition of her work with a zero tolerance policy towards any form of bullying. And Pepe was the winner of a Pride of Britain Award as Teacher of the Year. She is currently an advisor for Child of Britain and Child of Wales and was voted one of the UK's top 100 happiest people. So welcome, Pepe. And Andrew Moffat, I've been following, as I have with Adrian and Pepe, I've been following Andrew's work for some time now. To many, Andrew will need no introduction. He has an MBE. He is the author, Chief Executive Officer of No Outsiders. He is a trust leader and a teacher trainer at Excelsior Multi Academy Trust in Birmingham. He has written several books on education and several education resources, including, as I mentioned, No Outsiders program. And he was not only awarded an MBE in 2017 for services to equality in education, but he was also nominated for a prestigious Global Teacher Prize in 2019. His work is transformational in primary schools, and he's currently working on an update to his very successful book, No Outsiders, Everyone Different, Everyone Welcome. So welcome, Andrew Moffat MBE. Welcome, Pepe, Pride of Britain. Welcome, Adrian, Teach Happy. What a wonderful collection of people we have here today. I feel my work is done. If I leave now, I'll feel happy, but we are going to have a conversation. So just to go back to that initial proposition, if a young person feels that they have a strong sense of their identity, they feel a sense of belonging, they feel welcomed, appreciated by those around them, then they are able to learn in schools. Then they are receptive to the people around them, receptive to the learning around them, and they're able to make a success of life. That's the proposition that I am thinking about. I'm interested to hear from all of you how that sits with you, your interpretation of that, whether you agree with that, disagree with that, have something to say. And then afterwards, I want us to look more deeply at the work that you're doing in your communities that support this idea of identity. So, Adrian, if I could come to you, identity, what's your thoughts?
When I was invited to join this panel, it was about kind of positive identity and links to well-being. My initial thoughts were about around that concept of belonging, because there is really good research that shows that, particularly in schools, a sense of belonging is fundamental to learning. It's also fundamental to a sense of well-being, and I think that's really because we are, as a species, as human beings, we are essentially a tribal species, as in our whole survival has relied on us being part of a group. And actually, it's even more than that. Like, I think when we truly understand our roots as a species that's evolved over literally, hundreds of thousands of years, we have survived the best when we're part of a diverse group, not when we're all the same, we all think the same, we all behave the same way. That actually our survival has very much relied on us being a real hodgepodge of individuals, but collectively we're all working for like this shared sense of purpose, this shared common goal. And I think that's where the sense of belonging and identity comes in. So one, there's the respecting the individuality of everyone in the group and feeling like my individual traits, intelligence, skill set, perspective, outlook on life is valued in this group. Plus the fact that in this group, I have an important role to play, that I can help the success of this group survive, find food, lead a kind of happy, fulfilling life. So those are the two angles I see here. It's respect for the individual and then making that individual feel like they're a really valued part of a wider group, that you are part of something bigger than just yourself.
Lovely. Thank you, Adrian. Pepe, how does this word identity chime with you and your thinking?
I think that was great what Adrian's just said. I think even being introduced today, it's feeling like you belong and feeling you have a right to be here. And so thank you for that. I think for me, if you don't have a strong identity, I think you don't actually know what, or you don't know what your place is in the world. It creates a whole sense of, in schools we've seen it, you know, you can become fearful, you're discontent, angry. And for me, it's been a huge priority in terms of allowing children to feel like they belong. And as we go through this talk, that's going to involve lots and lots of different things. You know, we've all had children that have experienced trauma, don't have that stability in their lives. And for me, you know, developing self-identity with children in schools, it's not something that's fixed. It's not something you bolt on a special theme day. It's something that is embedded into your curriculum. You know, for me, it's creating a safe environment where everyone feels welcome. When I think back to when I was a child, you know, you're not comfortable when you're trying to be someone you're not. And I think we've all been there. We've all had that in life. And for me, it's having that empathy for what happens when a child that perhaps has either been borderline exclusion or has been excluded and then comes to your environment. It's making everyone feel like they have that role. And so for me personally, self-identity, it's important to teach it. And that comes with a whole host of things. You know, happiness doesn't have to be a big song and a dance. And I hope that when we go through this, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about how we can sew that into so many different parts of the curriculum.
Yeah. We will discuss that. I think that would be really great, because we do want these talks not only to inspire, but also give people things to think about that they could do in their own practice. Thank you, Pepe. Andrew, this word identity, do the ideas that you've heard from Pepe and Adrian chime with you? Are there other things you'd add?
Yes, absolutely. And I would completely agree with everything that Pepe and Adrian is saying. And I really like the idea that Pepe just said, that we have to teach this. We do have to teach it. We can't leave it to chance. You know, and we have to be honest as well, that there are some people in the world today who are on a mission to make sure some people don't feel like they belong. You know, I'm thinking of the rise of the far right in Europe, in America, the alt-right at the moment, you know, whose sole aim really is to shut out some people. You don't belong here. We need to be teaching our children really consistently and bravely that everyone belongs and you belong too. And, you know, my aim really through all of this work is to inspire global citizenship. You know, I want every child to know, first of all, to know who they are, and secondly, to be proud of who they are, to know that they belong in my class, in my school, in the UK, in the world. And as Adrian said as well, that have a contribution to make. You know, we want children to engage in democracy, you know, to get a good job, you know, to contribute to society. So, you know, we're playing the long game here, aren't we? It's not a quick fix. We're playing the long game, and we need to be very clear about what we're teaching here and why we're teaching it.
Yeah, it is. We are creating the society that we want to see as educators. I think that's a really important point, Andrew. Thank you. So my next question is, in your own work, in your own practice, how do you go about teaching identity or belonging or this sense of self-awareness? What are things that we can do, and what are you doing in your own work to help other educators or schools to do this? Adrian, I'll come to you first, please.
Yeah, so something that I wrote about in my first book, and it seems to be an idea that has resonated with a lot of teachers, is this idea of team flags. And it comes from the chapter in my book called Creating Tribal Classrooms. And that phrase comes from a professor called Louis Cozzolino. And just to go back to that point I made earlier about our kind of tribal past, like Louis Cozzolino makes the point that for the majority of the last 100,000 years and more, modern humans have lived in hunter-gatherer tribes. And it's only really in the last 10,000 years that we've moved from these hunter-gatherer tribal-based societies to agricultural to industrial-based societies that many of us live and work in now. And although 10,000 years seems like a huge amount of time, in terms of biological evolution, it's the blink of an eye, and that we are deeply rooted in our tribal past, that we think best, learn best, are happiest when we feel like we belong and are part of this kind of essentially extended family. And so the way I've tried to bring that to life in my classrooms that I've taught in is at the beginning of term, get children to think about what it means to be part of a good team. and we look at a video montage of Team GB. And the reason I like Team GB is because it's full of diverse role models, you know, from all different backgrounds, that hopefully our children from our, you know, their diverse communities and backgrounds, there's someone in Team GB that they can identify with and relate to. And we just watch this video, and then we have a discussion as a class, like, what values, qualities, attributes do you think Team GB need to be successful? What do you think we need to be a successful team this year? And they'll come up with values like kindness, honesty, teamwork, perseverance, resilience, etc. And the teacher, you know, you can be writing these on the board, and then you give every child a blank piece of paper, and you say, look, choose a value that you think is really important to be part of a good team. Write it in bold on your piece of paper, and then we piece all of them together, and they're really bright and colourful, and it just creates this one big team flag. And in that moment, you know, if we were class year 4, we become team year 4. And that becomes what some experts call our symbol of unity. It signifies that everyone, you know, you might have just created one small part to the team flag, but you are part of something bigger than yourself, that you belong, that these values are a work in progress. We can work towards these every day. And that everyone has a role to play. Like this, our team can only be successful if everyone, kind of like our flag shows, pulls together and works together as a team. And I've just found that that's been a really simple but successful and creative way to help children feel like they are part of a team and they belong, and, you know, that we're living these shared values together.
I like what you say about it. We can work on this every day. And it speaks to what Pepe and Andrew have just confirmed, that this sense of identity and well-being and working together, it can be taught, and schools play a vital role in creating those positive attributes that we want to see. Pepe, you've done a lot in from talking to you before, and as I mentioned in the introduction, in your practice and in your work in promoting the work, promoting and celebrating the life of Stephen Lawrence. And I'm sure that must have had just such a profound impact on young people. What you've done amazing things. You're still doing amazing things. Where is your line of work taking you, either then or at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. For me, being in a school, it was about, and I think some people may have thought I might have been a little bit obsessed with this, but it was creating opportunities for children to shine. And, you know, the work of Stephen Lawrence, for me as a very young teacher, I can remember being handed the Macpherson report and being told by my lovely head, phenomenal head, I think this is your area, this is your job. And gosh, talk about being made to feel like you're welcome and that's your role. But it wasn't meant in the way that it was done, but it actually really triggered in me that the Macpherson report was something that, you know, we were all supposed to be developing in schools. And actually, it's been an honor and a privilege to look at the life of Stephen. I think many people are scared to look at, you know, what happened with Stephen Lawrence. But if you look at the people that murdered Stephen, I often questioned what sort of school did they attend? Going back to what Adrian's just said about how we should all be made to feel welcome. What sort of education did those murderers have? In that, just because of the color of someone's skin, that person was different to them. They felt that they had to extinguish that. And so for me, it was launching the life of Stephen Lawrence, but doing it in a way that was positive. And I can honestly say, having worked with Doreen Lawrence, if anyone epitomizes out of darkness comes light, and you can have that as your curriculum. If we're talking about teaching children self-identity and skills for life, even out of something so tragic, we as schools can learn from that. And I don't mean just ticking boxes and Black History Month where you're bolting on, like I said at the beginning. This is about developing something that we embed, you know. So I took Stephen's name, as simple as it sounds. So special, talented, education, positive role models, hope, equality, and never forgetting. And if you were to look at those 7 threads in themselves, they don't necessarily have to talk about the racist murder of Stephen, but actually having Stephen at the center meant that we could say Stephen was an ordinary boy like you and I. You know, he had hobbies, he had talents, he had skills just like all of us. You know, Stephen wanted to be an architect. what if Stephen had designed the best stadium, the best concert hall in the world? We'll never know, because that was taken away. And then you can kind of bring it back to the children themselves. Why are you special? So the first S on the acrostic, positive role models. Those positive role models can be your parents. They can be people in books. And so it kind of created a whole curriculum. And I'm going to say it because I feel really proud of it. It created a curriculum that was irresistible. It was a curriculum that, the last bit, never forget. Even things like the Windrush partition. When I was at school, I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel, when we saw the big maps on the walls that were empire and coloured. I'd go home and my father would be telling me something completely different about empire. So then when I went into school, I had to be somebody very different, and in order to fit in. What if that had been celebrated as I was growing up through school as a child? So Stephen Lawrence was a huge part, alongside our 3 Bs, which were to believe in yourself. I think that massively looks at the whole self-identity, to blow the whistle on a bully. And that for us was talk to somebody. And I think that in school, we get so, and post-pandemic now, a lot of us are feeling anxious. It's getting back to where we were before the pandemic. And are we as schools not brave enough to be saying, no, this is what works for my school, this is what works for my community? And the final B was to ban bullying. Bullying is bad. Again, that alongside our Stephen Lawrence curriculum, it just worked. And that whole self-identity, the different 7 threads, meant that I could keep bringing the life of Stephen back to our children in their own school communities. And so teaching racism then wasn't scary. It didn't alienate people. It didn't make the community feel, here she goes, she's doing something that actually doesn't relate to any of us. Because when you're teaching, and especially in an all-white community, that in itself can be, well, that doesn't apply to us. And if you think about that in life, self-identity, and, we are all different. If you know me, I'm all about food and singing. And so much of our curriculum, life, we're like a box of licorice all sorts. We're all different, but we have all got those common threads. So even those murderers, there were common threads that could have been tapped into. I'm probably getting a bit controversial now, but I think if our roles as schools are to change and shape community, then we've got to be a bit more honest with what we're teaching and be prepared to be asked difficult questions.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in what you've said that's absolutely right. And I've heard this word now, I think from both of you, both you, Adrian, and Pepe, is this word brave. Andrew, no outsiders. It's fantastic, the work that you have done and the way that you are helping schools to think so broadly and inclusively, and just very powerful work. For those people who don't know the work that you've been doing, can you give us a flavor of perhaps why you started thinking about this, how you put the program together, and the distance traveled now, because you're now on to writing the second version of this?
Oh, well, thanks, Ray. And first of all, I'd like to echo Pepe last bit. Her last talk, where she talked about how it can't be a bolt-on. It's got to be a threaded through. So I remember a former teacher of mine talked about not as being the fabric of the school. I thought it was a really good line. I'm currently a Year 5 teacher at Green Meadow School in Birmingham. I've just come out from teaching line multiplication. My class are right now doing insoluble and soluble materials in science, and then they're going to start reading the Christmas Carol. So we're all busy, aren't we? As teachers, we're all busy. The day is packed, and we've got targets you have to meet. So when do we teach this stuff? Because we have got to teach it. So that's why it can't be a bolt-on, a one-off lesson, a once-a-week lesson. It's got to be an ethos that comes down through everything we do and all that we talk about. So that's why I wrote No Outsiders. The whole point of No Outsiders is that we're saying in our school there are no outsiders here, because everyone is welcome. and we talk about how we are different, and in reception it's very, very simple. Reception year 1, basically it's we play together, that's it. By the time we get to year 6, I'm expecting children to say, and they do say this in my school, well, what's Night Outsiders about? It's about different skin, religion, different language, nationality. It's about being sexual orientation, being transgender, a disability, British values, about the Equality Act, but it all starts off with we play together. And the reason why I think No Outsiders works really well as a phrase, as an ethos, is because every child in reception understands what it means to be left out, and no one wants to be left out. So if you're teaching children, from the moment they come in to school, there are no outsiders here, then they tap into it. I've just got to wave at year 1 because they're walking past my window and they're all waving at me. So if I don't wave, I'm being rude. Hi. So I'm at the front of the school with the big window in front of me. Where was I? Yes, everyone understands, what it means to be left out. No one wants to be left out. Therefore, children understand what it's about, and it's accessible, and it comes into everything that we talk about, equality, but also our own behaviour as well. That behaviour is making you an outsider. No one wants to be an outsider. We don't behave like that at Green Meadow School, but then there are lessons. I use picture books a lot, and I use news stories, assembly pictures, where we talk about real life, and I'll show you this shortly. But also the other key, and again this comes back to what Ray was saying about with Stephen Lawrence about those people that did that horrific crime. Well, they also were in a school, weren't they? And what are they learning? So, and what are children learning at home? And we can't be stick our heads in the sand. We don't live in a rose-tinted world. There are some children that are getting messages at home that are opposite to this, that are not inclusive. So one of the things that I'm doing at the moment, so after I leave you today, I've got 2:30, I've got a parent Nightsiders workshop with a year 6 class, and we're doing 2 classes a week, and we're all coming in, and we're going to go in the hall, we do a Nightsiders lesson, and it's the parent with their child. And I've done 3 so far this term, and they're incredibly popular because actually all parents like working with their children, and we do artwork together, and it's all based on, we want them to go home with this same message, so that parents understand about No Outsiders and children do as well.
How absolutely wonderful and inspiring. It's you're doing such amazing work, Andrew. Really is really impressive. I love this term and that you've used, Andrew, and you're absolutely right. Even the youngest children understand the idea of no outsiders and every child to be included. And that speaks to me about what you were saying earlier on, Adrian, about how we are born to be tribal. The success of our race, the human race, is about working together in teams. And you also talked about everybody finding their place and feeling that they had something to offer and something to do. That's a very humanistic take on very fundamental. It's the sense of our DNA, our genetic disposition to want to socialize and get on with other people. I wonder if you have more to say about perhaps where we're missing a trick in encouraging this sort of pro-social skills.
Yeah, I think, so much more about what I'm reading these days just keeps coming back to this idea about, in a way, our roots as a species. And I think so much unhappiness and misery comes from us becoming more and more fractured and, becoming more and more individualistic, when actually we need to be thinking about each other more. I'll just read this section from, it's a very short section. It's from this book called The Gardener and the Carpenter by Professor Alison Gopnik, a world-renowned child developmental psychologist. And this just explains at the heart of us being, part of a diverse group of people. She says that human beings produce a particularly wide, variable and unpredictable mix of children, each with unique temperament and abilities, strengths and weaknesses, types of knowledge and varieties of skills. This gives us an advantage. It lets us adapt to an unpredictable, changing culture and environment. And she says that a system that shifts and varies, even randomly, can adapt to a changing world in a more intelligent and flexible way. And just to bring it right to the 21st century, this is what is happening with COVID, for example. Mutations, when things change randomly, they start to adapt better. And this is just like a key part of biological evolution, you know. And this is why human beings have adapted and survived for so long as a species, because we have a wide mix of people. And what she goes on to say is, if you think about in an extended family, or let's say a classroom, when you have a wide mix of children in a class and a wide mix of teachers in a school community, you'll have people that are naturally risk takers, and you'll have people that are naturally conservative and, you know, more prudent, and they really think things through before acting. And what it means is, when you're in a situation where you need those bold risk takers that are like, yeah, I'll do this, those members of that group can help you survive and thrive in a risk-taking environment. And then when you need more slow, considered, cautious, actually, let's think this through, let's plan about this, you've got a group of people in your group that can help in those situations, but you need everybody. And this is, you know, this is, I think, fundamental to everybody knowing this and understanding this, because what that means is we truly do become accepting of difference when you think, actually, we are all better for having a wide, diverse mix of people in our classrooms, in our communities. If we all look the same, think the same, behave the same, we're not going to flourish as a group of people. The other thing is, then bring it back to the kind of individual. As lots of the other speakers have said, you know, we also have our individual identity. So, and that's really important to tap into as well. So, for example, I grew up in a very white middle class part of North London, but I'm half Jamaican, a quarter Italian and a quarter Irish. And that is a really important part of my identity. And I'm really proud of my diverse heritage. And that's partly because that pride comes from my family telling me stories about their childhood, like my dad growing up in Kingston in Jamaica, his dad working actually for the British Jamaican government, and that's the whole reason they came over here. My granddad talking about his Italian background and his love of food, because they went into catering, his family, and that's, you know, I love cooking and etc. And to bring it back to the whole tribal thing again, Louis Cozzolino says that stories and storytelling are a core part of our tribal identity, because they serve the reasons of social cohesion. Stories can bring us together. They help us regulate our emotions, and they also are brilliant for memory storage. Like, we remember stuff in stories far more than in other formats. And so this is another key part of identity. We need to share and promote positive stories where we ourselves as individuals think, yes, that character is like me. I can relate to that. But equally, so we understand other people that aren't like us. You know, it creates that understanding and that acceptance and that bringing together of everybody.
Thank you so much, Adrian. And stories are such a key part of the work that you do within No Outsiders, Andrew. You have picture books and stories. Have you found that this has been a really good way to transfer very powerful, important messages?
Yes. So I use stories for two reasons. Firstly, in a purely practical and political way, actually, to get parents on board, because I wanted a way to show parents, right, here's what we are teaching, here's what we're not teaching, let me show you how we're going to do it. And I imagined sitting down around a table in a classroom with all the books I'm going to use on the table, and initially I used 35. Now my updated scheme, I use 42 picture books, and they're all lovely, like Elmer's in there, you know. I mean, there's books of Michael Rosen, Oliver Jeffers, a couple of books of his in there, you know, and they're beautiful, lovely picture books that are non-threatening, and I can literally show parents, right, here's how we're doing it. But a second reason is as a teacher, you know, I've taught for 26 years. I know I don't look old enough. You know, I just like picture books, really, because I think as teachers, it's great to hang a lesson on a picture book, you know. And what I like about when you use them to talk about potentially challenging the subjects is that you are talking about the characters. You're not talking about us. You know, I can remember, you know, I taught SEAL in the days of the early noughties, you know, and SEAL had a lot of great things about it. But I do remember sometimes opening a book up, it said, like, talk about being proud, talk about, you know, it's like, how? You know, and I wanted something that I could literally use, you know, show and use, and that's what I use storybooks for. You know, they're an opening, basically. They're an opening to a wider discussion.
I mean, it's taken off so well, Andrew, and I know that many schools are using the No Outsiders program, and also you have some beautiful graphics that go along that schools can proudly display that they're part of the No Outsiders program.
Yes, yeah. It's about having a message. It's about being very clear, isn't it? That's why, like, you know, all my teachers wear a No Outsiders lanyard. It's about being visible. You know, here's what we're about. You know, as you come into school, what do you see when you come into school that tells you what the school are about? You know, so we have, like, you know, No Outsiders poster and displays, so you make it very clear from the start. But you see, that's also actually a political thing, isn't it? It's about being very clear to all our parents, our stakeholders, about here's what we're about. You know, when you come here, there's no hidden agenda here.
Yeah.
You know, we're being very clear from the start. When you walk in the school gates, this is what our school is about. Here's our ethos, here's our belief.
Beautiful, and absolutely speaks volumes to parents and to the community about what you stand for as individuals and collectively. I think it's absolutely inspirational what you're doing. Pepe, you mentioned, you said, when you're not comfortable, when you're not comfortable when you're trying to be someone else. So we're talking about identity, but I suppose I'm also thinking about the challenge for people, and Adrian sort of touched on it really, of how do we as schools create environments where people are able to celebrate that plurality of who they are and to feel comfortable in their own skin and who they are. Do you have some ideas? Can you think about ways where, irrespective of where you come from, what your nationality, your gender, your sexual orientation, how do we create cultures, I'm thinking perhaps even beyond schools, where people feel comfortable, to use that word?
Gosh, you know, there's so much that both Adrian and Andrew have said that it's fantastic, honestly, really fantastic listening, because you're reflecting all the time, aren't you? Just going back to what Adrian said about how we're all different, you know, gosh, my husband would have been absolutely scared to death to be taught by somebody like me. And I think as you evolve as well as a leader, you realize that a school has to have a variety of different teachers. You know, we were talking about at the beginning how, you know, some people hear the word well-being and happiness and it's like, you know, you're brainwashing the children into smiling and dancing and singing, you know, and I think that's where we have to be really, really, I'm going to use the word strategic in how you plan, how you teach this within your curriculum. So, you know, both Andrew and Adrian have talked about role models. You know, for me, I'm going to use an example. Year 6, okay, so I can remember we used to have homework projects, and I can remember somebody saying, oh, well, it's obvious his dad's done that. And it really made me think, and I just thought, so what? Why don't we have homework projects where the children are working alongside their parents and we are celebrating the skills and the talents of the parents, which, you know, sometimes you might work in communities where that in itself is difficult. And so going back to your question, it's tapping into your community, you know, the role models that children have around them. It may not just be the teachers within school. You know, we're all part of different systems, different groups, and our families. I think Andrew said, you know, sometimes the values of the families of children may not be the values that you are trying to instill in school. And so that in itself is important, to broach that and bring the community in. And I don't just mean parents, I mean you know, so whether it's grandparents' days, Father's Fridays, Mother's Mondays, you know, where you are welcoming and you are celebrating family. We used to have a pride board, and I'm going to, what have you done today to make you feel proud? That was my Heather Small impression, by the way, guys. And that sounds really, really tiny and a little thing, but a board whereby even I, as head teacher, might walk past that board and I might see a child's face on that board. And I might see that child, or I might actively go to look for that child that day and say, see that your face is on the pride board today. What's that all about? It's creating moments where children can feel that they can talk about, that in itself is difficult. I think what we're talking about today, we're not saying it's easy. It is difficult, particularly post-pandemic. And I think the lives of teachers and head teachers, it is challenging, because I think, as Andrew said, you've got to teach all those specific statutory things. But I'm thinking, they're not exclusive. You can teach the whole academic side alongside the well-being and happiness. They don't, for me, I can remember at the start the school being called the special needs school on the hill. I thought that was quite a badge, actually, quite a badge of honour, because we were seen to be the school that accepted children perhaps that were not coping elsewhere, and that we were a happy school. So therefore, a happy school cannot necessarily be an academically achieving school. And for me, I'm not going to say it's easy, because it wasn't. It really, really wasn't easy. And I think that we are shaped by our experiences. So good night, Mr. Tom. I mean, gosh, what a story. What a book. And for me, with year 6, looking at the role of the mother in that story, looking at Mr. Tom, if we have role models that we can look up to that perhaps necessarily may not exist in our life, it's bringing those characters to life. And I will say, going back to Stephen Lawrence, he was alive in our school. Children had wished that they'd met him. And so I think it was Adrian that said, it's important to have role models, because when we have role models and we see the way other people behave, does it make us treat other people differently? It's just a question. We used to have a stilling room, and the stilling room, we were a church school, but I always said that most of our children were not Christians. Even though we were a church school, most of our kids that came to the school, creating opportunities where they could just go in and telephone. And originally it was going to be the telephone to God. And that was, for different people, it could have been uncomfortable for some. So again, I was having to appeal to everybody in the school, regardless of background. I mean, I got told off once when I was asked, is your school outstanding? This is when I was a deputy, because it's a church school. And apparently my answer was supposed to be, yes, it's because it's a church school. And I said, no, it's not. I'm not a Christian. So I'm in a Christian school. So therefore, that whole licorice all sorts, we're all different, but it's finding those common threads that what pulls us together. Even Fit Fridays, we'd have a Friday where we would award a fruit basket to the parent that joined in the most with the Fit Friday and stuff on the Friday. I mean, there's so many different things, but we are shaped by our experiences. And if we can develop a curriculum that gives those children those experiences, then we're kind of getting there.
And that's one of the things that I know about you, Pepe, is the richness of your curriculum and the opportunities that you gave children that they might otherwise not have had. Believe it or not, colleagues, we're into the last quarter of an hour of what has already been a fabulous discussion. So before I go on to start taking some questions that have come in, I wanted us to look towards the future and things that you're thinking about, that you're working on, that you're going to be doing next, or things perhaps that you're more aware of, because we are still in the middle of a global pandemic. So I'll come to Andrew. What are you working on? What are you thinking about for the future?
Well, we had Ofsted in June, and one of their targets for us was to have our children know more about British values, or be able to sort of talk about what British values were.
About British values.
I know. I thought that they knew already.
Oh my goodness.
They obviously asked the wrong children. Anyway, so one of the things that we did on our newsletter, I'll show this to you, is we have, so these are night size assemblies that we do. We do two a week, and every Friday now, the newsletter, we send home the pictures, and we said to parents, ask your child to tell you about the stories behind these pictures and how they link to this value. So this is just so you know, these are for last week. There's one picture. It's two zebras. It's a mummy zebra and a baby zebra, but if you can see, the baby zebra has not got stripes. I find it's quite unusual, but you can get zebras occasionally without stripes. So that's a great picture. Let's talk about difference. Also, difference within a family as well. Is mum embarrassed about her baby zebra because they've got spots? You know, how would that conversation have gone, do you think? Or do you think the mum just doesn't really care, and does mum look embarrassed, do you think? Or they're just walking together as a happy mother and child, even though the child looks different? And how does that relate to our school, you know, in terms of being different and belonging and everyone fitting in? And the other one, because too, is that was a lovely one about a supermarkets in Netherlands who have started to have, and I apologize, I can't remember the word in Dutch, but basically it's a lane for people who are elderly or who are lonely, who want someone to talk to. So it's a slower lane that you can go to if you want to have a chat while you're having your things scanned, and it's taken off in Netherlands, which is again, it's a lovely story, isn't it, about looking after people, you know, who might be a bit different, adapting the way that we do things so that everyone knows they belong. So as is your question, Ray, I would say more about recognizing and referencing British values, but also working with parents. That's my aim this term, this year. You know, I really want, you know, all parents to be really confident and happy and enthusiastic, actually, about no outsiders in our school.
And knowing you, I'm sure you will achieve that. And I really love what you're doing there. It's similar to what Pepe is talking about, is that you are able to build that culture or strengthen that culture in the community, and really getting parents involved in the ethos of the school, but within their own homes. I think that's really exciting things that you're doing. And I've certainly taken that on board. I'm thinking I could do more with my newsletters if I take a leaf out of your book.
Absolutely.
Adrian, what are you thinking about? What are you working on next?
Well, we've just finished in our school. Well, it was Anti-Bullying Week nationally, and what we do in my school, and we've done in the previous 3 schools I've worked in, is it's called To Be Kind Week. And the idea is really simple. Every child from reception up to year 6 is encouraged to carry out a random act of kindness as part of a home learning project, and then capture it somehow. You know, they can write about it, take a picture, draw, video, whatever they want to do, and just reflect on what did you do and how did it feel to carry out that act of kindness. And then we're also this year, given our freedom compared to last, it's called To Be Kind Week, where everyone was in lockdown. We're encouraging each class to go out into the local community to do an act of kindness as well. And the reason we do this is, one, to promote the behaviours we want to see. So yes, we don't accept bullying in our school, but equally, what's the alternative? The alternative is to look out for each other, to help one another, to think about what others need. And there's loads of research from, you know, the science of well-being that shows that being kind, pro-social to others, not only does it boost our well-being, it also boosts the recipients as well. So that's kind of coming to a conclusion. And every year we do this because kindness has this ripple effect. It doesn't just end at the end of It's Called To Be Kind Week, that kids are still kind of doing random acts of kindness for their teachers, for each other. So that's been on our radar recently. And it's just every year, it just creates such a lovely, positive feeling. And even last year when we were in lockdown, what we did instead was a whole school art project. And we contacted local care homes. We thought about who in our community really needs some help right now, maybe to let people know that we're thinking of them. And we thought about care home residents and also the workers, because if you think back to November last year, no one was pretty much allowed anywhere near care homes for good reasons. And yeah, we sent care homes, you know, original works of art from primary school children to brighten up their hallways, their bedrooms, their communal areas. And we received some lovely emails and photos of residents enjoying the artwork. So that's, you know, that's a huge part of, I think, identity as well, is thinking about what can I do to contribute to the happiness of others, because that is a key to our well-being that I don't think gets focused on enough. It's often like, okay, how can I focus on me and make myself happy? I can do more exercise, I can do meditation, etc., etc. But a massive part of the jigsaw is what can we do to others to contribute to their sense of happiness and well-being? And surprise, surprise, when we do that more, we often feel happier as a result.
Well, that's a lovely segue into what will be our next Smiley Talks, because having looked at identity today, I want to look at the importance of connection. And your example there, similar to Andrew's, is this, to use your words again, the ripple effect of what schools are doing to improve their community, which is a lovely idea about working with people that have genuinely been so vulnerable through this very difficult time. So a lovely example. Thank you, Andrew. Sorry, Adrian. Thank you, Adrian. Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Adrian. Pepe, I know something of the work you've done some amazing work in curriculum, but you're also looking to do even more work in curriculum. So what are you working on now and next?
So I think gosh, again, so many things that both gentlemen have said today. You know, one of my big things in school was to catch children being good. And I know at the beginning, you know, you said about Pride of Britain, and my take is, you know, when we're spreading happiness, you get a lot of happiness, just like Adrian's just said, from giving it back. And so the work I'm involved in now, which actually it's quite new, it's fairly new. I was very blessed to be asked to be part of the organisation, which is Child of Britain. So catching children being good, this is about shining a light on children across the UK. We've got our first big event, which is Child of Wales in January. And it is about looking at those children across the country that, and it's not lockdown, it can be, you know, it can be children that are just hidden and we don't know, you know, these extraordinary people that really genuinely do live amongst us. Children who have triumphed, even though they've had some real struggles, children that are courageous, children. And I think one of the things I wanted to kind of highlight here is that for us, certainly in our school, we wanted to shine a light and give opportunities to children. It sounds a little bit, but to be the best that they can be. And I think the organisation that I'm part of at the moment, it's not just children that have been poorly, it's children. If you feel your child has something special that you want to shout about, and we are really looking to schools as well, because we've not had as much interest from schools. Generally, it's come from the public in general for nominations. But this is going to be a really special event. You know, it's going to be the child version of Pride of Britain, if you like. It's about finding those children that we can look up to, if you like, and follow them in their lives. I look at if we go back to, Ray, what we've talked about today about self-identity, I always used to think that in that last term for year sixes, it was tapping into, they really didn't know where they belonged. You know, unless you can see a future. So we used to have year 7 work experience days. And so when children were doing shuffle up, which we had quite a few of, all the year 7s would come in suits and ties and, you know, their smartest dress, and they'd be the year 7s going around doing work experience across the school. And for me, it was that sense of belonging. We still belong. We might be leaving, but we still belong, and we're going to leave a legacy. And so,
wonderful.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
You know, shining a light really on children that you know.
So thank you so much, Pepe. And congratulations and all best wishes for this very important work. So we are into the last few minutes of what has been a wonderful conversation this afternoon. And so I'm just going to try to round up. You've got about 2 minutes each. We've talked about identity. We've talked about happiness. What are the quick wins that we can do to share a little happiness, to spread a little happiness, either in our communities or in our schools? Who'd like to start?
I'll just
Adrian.
I'll just end by saying, you know, in terms of happiness, I think it's important to reflect on what is it that gives you a sense of pleasure and purpose in life, and to keep coming back to that question, because it will change as you go through life, as you learn more, as you go to a different school, and that is, bringing it back to self-identity. That is what makes us unique. It's subjective well-being for a reason, because what gives me a sense of pleasure and purpose will be different to other people. So yeah, I just think that's an important question to reflect on regularly throughout your life. What gives me a sense of pleasure and purpose, and to be true to your answers, rather than living a life that someone else might want you to lead.
I heard somebody saying something very similar about, find what energizes you and go and do more of that. If you're feeling that your reserves are low, think about where you get your energy from and go to that place. Andrew, top tips as we're just unfortunately wrapping up this afternoon.
Well, I think I'll give my last words to a child. So I'm going to read this little note from a child. She gave it to me. I've got a photo there. Gave it to me in my class on Friday. She says, "Some people will say that Mr. Moffat is part of the LGBT plus community. I remember you were making a work film, and I said, are you the new James Bond? And you said yes. I'll just say that I was the new James Bond to my class. And so I went to the bathroom, and a year 6 child came in, and I told them you was a new James Bond, and they said, what they said made me so upset. They said, Mr. Moffat's gay. He can't be new James Bond. I was so upset by this, and I said, he can be James Bond. It can be whatever he wants to be. And she ends by saying, I'm so proud that you're brave enough to tell Green Meadow School you can be different. Different is delightful. So, when you've got year 5 children writing little notes like that, you think that's the answer, isn't it? It's about children being so clear, that actually we're all different, we all belong, but also I'll stand up for you. I'll stand up for you if I hear someone put you down, so I'll leave with that little anecdote.
How lovely, big or small, we're none too little to make a big difference. That's such a lovely example, Andrew. Thank you. Pepe, your thoughts about how we can spread a little happiness in the world?
Is this where I sing, Ray? Ken Jones style. Happiness, happiness. No, I mean, happiness is key. It sounds obvious, but in schools, we've just got to be brave. It doesn't actually. A lot of people think it costs a lot of money, but I think just listening to that beautiful story, that absolutely that Andrew's just said. We used to have a plane that flew to different places. It was a make-believe plane. And I will never forget the child when we were all flying back, and all the cabin crew of the staff, and this little boy was getting back onto the plane, which was just in the hall. It was chairs. We were all flying on a simulator. And he stopped there and he said, I don't want to go back. And for me, if we can create schools whereby, and it does make me emotional, because I truly, truly think that we are shaped by our experiences. You look at the year 6 SATs years ago, Maxie and Clara getting on a train. My kids couldn't answer the question because 30 out of 31 of them had never been on a train. What was our mission? We were going to go on a train for our next trip. So happiness is key. It doesn't cost. It's about also us as teachers. If we want to be happy, we've got to create those special hot spots within our weeks and embed them, exactly as both Adrian and Andrew said. I wish I could talk to both of you so much more, because it's been an absolute honor to hear you. Honestly, you've been so inspiring and just made me think and reflect so much. We can't all be the same. And at the start of my career, I was, I always wanted things to be all singing, all dancing. And now I've realized that it's important to create those reflective moments, time for children to talk.
How lovely. Time for children to talk, singing, making everybody appreciate how unique they are. I think it's probably not just about children. It's about all of us, isn't it? Finding our place in the world and feeling that none of us are outsiders. Thank you so much to you, Andrew Moffat, amazing MBE, fantastic. Adrian Bethune, teach happy. That's such a key message. And Pepe Hart, you've been an absolute joy as well. Thank you, colleagues. It's been a splendid 1 hour. It's gone so quickly. We could have gone on for another hour, I'm sure. Thank you to everybody watching us at home. Join us next time, where we'll be talking about the importance of connection. Thank you. My name's Ray Snape. We are the Smiley Movement. Bye-bye.